thank you for watching my channel. This is another of those small bits of information from the Warrior Teacher Program, and this is one that always causes a great deal of conversation whenever it comes up, and we try to get to the nitty-gritty of it, because it is a difficult concept to get your head round. It's even more difficult to get your head around when you realise that the concept is treated differently according to where you're coming from. So it's complicated, all right? Even though it sounds phenomenally simple, it's not. We hear an awful lot about this particular thing. Empathy, right? That's what we hear an awful lot about, empathy, right? And we also hear an awful lot about this other one, which will pop up here, sympathy. But I was asked by somebody the other day, what's the difference between the two? Well, that's a very interesting question. That's a very interesting question. Well, it depends on where you're coming from. If you're coming from the medical world, then empathy has a much deeper resonance and a much deeper importance, because empathy is about understanding where someone else is by imagining yourself being in their shoes. There's a great quote from Billy Connolly who said, "You'll never understand anyone until you've walked a mile in their shoes." And I think it's a very true comment, although he did follow up with, at which point it doesn't matter because you're a mile away and you've got their shoes. Thank you for that, Billy. Right? So let's talk about sympathy. Right? Sympathy is a kind of feeling thing, right? So you have my sympathies. There can be a passive aggressive part to that, can't there? Oh, you have my sympathies. Right? You have my sympathies. There can be a definite tone of disdain. Or you get a card that says with sympathy. So it's being sympathetic, simpatico. It's being sympathetic to another person means to I suppose in a way, recognise what it is that's going on with them and understand where they're coming from. Different from empathy, because sympathy is primarily about getting past awkward situations, I think. But that's just me. I mean, this is why it causes so much conversation. And people say things, oh, but so-and-so died. And then you do that whole, well, I'm so sorry, it's just, what else can you do? You know? So sympathy is very much about, I think, some kind of social oil, right? It's trying to keep the engine going socially. That's where I would go from sympathy. Empathy is a different ballgame altogether, right? And part of the problem that we've got in the world right now is people think empathy is about feeling. It's got nothing to do with feeling. Empathy is 100% a thinking thing. 100% a thinking thing. It's about really thinking about what's happening to that individual. It's a reflection upon your own emotional reactions to the world in which we live, and really thinking about what that individual is going through, and then attempting to respond in a good way. In a good way. So empathy is about finding connection with another individual on a very real, but on a thoughtful way, in a thoughtful situation, not, both sitting down and wailing at the moon. Empathy and sympathy. That's the difference between those two things, as far as I'm concerned. And it's for you to decide for yourselves whether you think I'm right or whether you think I'm wrong. But there's a problem, you see. There's a problem, because we weaponise everything now, and empathy has certainly been weaponised. Certainly been weaponised. You're supposed to be empathetic to everybody. Why would you be empathetic to everybody? You'd end up exhausted. Even the best counsellors in the world who sit with a client, and at that point, they don't matter. The counsellor doesn't matter. They are there solely for the betterment of the client's health. Even they, at that point, will only do one or two clients a day, because being empathetic is unbelievably tiring. And we've cheapened empathy by making it seem like everybody needs to be empathetic all the time to everyone, which you don't. Which you don't, because it works on the basis that all people are worthy of respect, which they aren't. Okay? So it begins then to tie into the idea of tolerance, and what do we tolerate, and what happens when the intolerable, look at what's going on, what happens when the intolerable appears. So you're then challenged by this, well, why would I want to be empathetic with that bloke who throws gay people off buildings, or hangs 14-year-old boys from cranes, or takes over women's sports, or pretends there's something they're not? Why would I want to be empathetic with them? I don't want to be empathetic with them. I want them out of the way. I want them gone. So empathy becomes different. I can sympathise with their situation because they're obviously not well, and I can sympathise that the laws of their land make them do these awful things. I can sympathise with that, right? But I'm not going to be empathising with these people. Why would I bother? It's the old story. You're walking down the road and you see a little man in a hole. He's down in the hole and he's stuck down in the hole, right? Okay, so empathy is putting a hand down, giving him a help out of the hole. Sympathy is getting in the hole with him. That's how I see it. Except there's a third dimension to this, which people often ignore, and that third dimension is apathy. And the trouble with sympathy and empathy is the more that you weaponize sympathy and empathy, the more it will lead to apathy. Apathy amongst people who will not care, who will get... You ever heard of something called charity fatigue? Which is where people, the charities keep begging for stuff and you think, oh, I shan't bother, sod them. Charity fatigue, right? Something like that. So empathy and sympathy, when overused and not appropriate, drive apathy. Apathy is inertia, right? And the apathy can become so deep, which is what we're seeing in so many of the population right now. The apathy can become so deep because we're constantly talking about feelings and, oh, yeah, sympathy, and at the same time, asking people to empathise with those who are just downright nuts or who are attempting to cause real problems within, for example, sport or schools. I'm not empathising with these people. I don't give a damn about them, but I'm not going to get apathetic about it. I'm going to do something. Whereas the other side is the sympathy, empathy, apathy. You drive apathy by an overemphasis on sympathy and empathy. And then eventually you end up not doing both. Apathy is inertia. That's what we're seeing. People are inert because they are tired or they are disinterested or they've been put off from actually getting involved in, for example, keeping LARPing men out of women's spaces or in making sure that gays and lesbians aren't put through the latest gay conversion therapy and all the stuff that comes with it, right? They won't do anything because they're inert. They're inert. And the problem with that is once you go down the apathy route, it eventually becomes atrophy. And at that point, you're not even engaging on any level that anybody can see of any use. There you go. Just a quick one. I thought you might like it. Now go talk about it with your friends. What exactly does it mean for us to have a world steeped in the need for empathy and sympathy rather than reality, which is, of course, the answer to apathy? I'll see you later. Bye-bye.